Hi everyone! So in this video I'm going to be talking about an abusive relationship I was in. It is not a happy subject, but it was just something that I felt like I wanted to talk about right now. It might have been requested at some point, I don't know, but I just feel like I wanted to talk about this to maybe spread some awareness about it. So this is a long story, it's going to be in 2 parts, and this part might be longer. So in the second part I'm going to finish telling my story, and then I'm going to tell you guys some red flags to look out for if you're in a relationship. Some red flags to look out for so that you will leave that relationship, because these are things that I wish I would have known then, because I did not know anything. And to any guy out there who's gonna watch, or not guy, any loser fuckhead out there who's gonna watch this and think that, oh, she's pretty and you know, she put up with that, and she if she had a boyfriend like that, then I guess I should start acting abusive, because apparently that's what girls like. Oh, girls like assholes. Look at that. She dated that asshole. Well, go ahead and cut your dick off right now, because you're an idiot. And no. The reason that I was in this relationship, well, maybe it will become clear to you if you watch the video and hear me talking about it, the complexities of this issue. And it's not like I sought out an abusive relationship, or that I enjoyed it, or any stupid shit like that, or that it is somehow beneficial for you to be abusive, because it's not. I'm just putting that disclaimer out there. If anyone watches this and think that since I dated an asshole that they should be an asshole, you know, no. And also, this video might be hard to watch for guys who are actually good people, so just putting a disclaimer out there, this might be hard for you to watch. So if you would rather read it at your own pace, I'm also going to be posting my notes on my blog. I'm going to read from my notes, so that's going to be a bright light right here. Alright, so first I'm going to talk about how we got together. I'm sure people will wonder why, how we got together. So basically I met him at a party. I was a theater major my freshman year of college, and this was an after party from one of our plays. And he was friends with someone who directed the play that I was in. So I was talking to him because we really got along really well. The director of the play, me and him really got along really well. I was talking to him, and he was friends with my soon-to-be abusive boyfriend. So basically I saw him, and he had like really pretty blue eyes. But anyway, so we were in a group talking, and he was like, wow, you have really white teeth. And I was like, thank you. It's kind of like one of those like, oh, you're instantly attracted, like superficial types of things. Like I thought his eyes were really pretty, and I don't know, he seemed really interesting and all this stuff. And then we became friends on MySpace. This was back in 2006 or something. So we became friends on MySpace. I was in a relationship with another guy at the time, but then I broke up, or we broke up. He broke up with me, and then I was single, but then this guy, I call him Voldemort. Voldemort kept messaging me. I always made excuses to not, you know, go out with him or hang out or whatever. I was always making excuses like, oh, I'm sick and blah 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 blah, and I'm going on vacation and all this stuff. But finally, when I felt like I was ready to date someone else, I had spent enough me time on myself, improving myself to where I was like optimum version of myself, which is really sad because it was all about to be torn down. But then finally I agreed to meet up with him. So we met up downtown. I was living in Athens, Georgia at the time. So we met up in downtown Athens and did some stuff. I don't remember what we did. I think we just went to a coffee shop or something. And then we went back to my apartment because I lived downtown at that time. And then once we got to my apartment, like, I mean, it was clear we were having a good time and whatever. But, you know, we were just getting to know each other. But once we got back to my apartment, he started talking about us getting married and, like, our whole future together. And I kind of just stared at him like, okay, whatever, sure. Like this, like, that was our first date, and he was talking about us getting married. So anyway, we kept hanging out, and then, you know, we became a boyfriend-girlfriend or whatever. And then, I guess a few weeks later, it was Valentine's Day, and he got me something for Valentine's Day. And I wasn't really into it, and he got really mad. Like, he got me like a really cheap stuffed animal from the drugstore. I was like, okay, I don't know, I just wasn't in a good mood, and I acting super happy, you know? So he took me not being really happy as like a personal insult and just kind of like flew off the handle. I don't know, this is just my first memory of being like, holy shit, this guy has really bad personal problems. So he just kind of like flew off the handle, was totally irrational. He just threw a tantrum, basically, like a childlike tantrum, but it was like a full-grown man throwing a tantrum. At that point I was like, okay, I don't like this person, I'm gonna break up with him. I already wasn't really that into him, but then it was just like, okay, I'm breaking up with him, this guy's nuts. And one day, while he was over at my apartment, I broke up with him, which is a big mistake. I should have broken up with him in a public place. So anyway, after I broke up with him, he started shaking me violently, like shaking me violently. He grabbed me and shook me violently and was like yelling at me in the face in a very frightening way, clearly trying to be intimidating and scare me. He then took my floor lamp, and by the way, if any of you are watching this and are thinking like, oh, this is so mild, I was in an abusive relationship, he totally like punched me in the eye and like stabbed me, and this sounds childish. Well, it was still, just let me finish, okay? Let me get to the whole story before you start making judgments about how not abusive this is. This was just the very beginning of everything. Okay, then he took my floor lamp and he bent it, and then he threw the cushions off of my couch and tossed them around angrily. Then he took my couch and threw my couch. Then he punched a hole in my wall. It's just like sheetrock wall. He punched a hole in it, and I told him to leave, and then he left my apartment, but then he started shaking the fence outside of my apartment building and screaming. Just basically went berserk. I don't know, and then my memory has that I drove him home because he didn't have a car, or driving to his apartment that he lived at with his bandmates, and I'm pretty sure he wasn't paying rent. When I dropped him off, he punched me in the arm, and it didn't hurt really. It wasn't like a really bad punch in the arm, but it was a punch in the arm. It wasn't like a playful, like, you know, if you're in a couple or if you're in a little argument, you know, it wasn't like a playful punch. It was like a punch that was like, okay, I'm not gonna like injure you, but I'm very violent right now and I want to intimidate you type of punch. Somehow he suckered me into getting back together with him. And anyway, then I remember another time where we were walking in the woods. You know, it was supposed to be just like a nice couples stroll in the woods. Not in the woods, it was like at a botanical garden, so we were on a trail. And then I just remember him pushing me, like basically, I don't know what I said, I don't know what happened, but he just started pushing me over and over, and every time I got up he would push me back down. It was just like very violent pushes, like if he was in a fight with another guy. He just kept shoving me over and over, and it was very frightening because it was very illogical. There wasn't anything that I knew of that set it off. His reaction was totally out of proportion to whatever had happened, because I didn't say or do anything that should have been that awful to deserve being pushed down on the ground over and over again. Then I didn't talk to him for the rest of the time, and it wasn't like the silent treatment, it was the I'm so shocked that I cannot form words right now treatment. I was so in shock that I couldn't look at him, I couldn't form words, I was just in shock. I'm sure there's gonna be some people like, wait, he just pushed you down, that's not a big deal. It was scary. It was like, is this person going to murder me in the middle of the woods right now type of situation. I just feel like I have to defend myself. Like people don't take these things seriously. It's terrible. So anyway, he apologized and we kept dating, and don't ask me how or why, because I would never tolerate this sort of thing now. Staying with him was a combination of me being so young and naive and being confused and bored and depressed and all this stuff. Also, there were some perks of being with him. Like, he was in a band, and they were like a semi-famous band in town. This was in Athens, and it's like a music town, and they were one of the more famous bands there, so I got to go to all these shows for free and be backstage. And also, he was the only way I was able to get drugs, and also at a certain point he was my only social interaction. So that leads me into the psychological abuse part of it. When I first started dating him, I had some friends, which weren't really friends, but they were something. They were some form of social interaction so that I had something to do on the weekends. But once I got with this guy, he didn't want me to hang out with anyone else other than him, which is putting it lightly. Like, it wasn't like he just didn't want me to hang out with other people. He psychologically manipulated me into not hanging out with other people, or not interacting with anyone other than him. So yeah, he manipulated me by saying these really weird, twisted things that I can't even fathom personally, because I don't have a manipulative mind that knows how to emotionally manipulate people. So eventually he lowered my self-esteem and self-confidence so much that it was like I was basically codependent, and this was like where my social anxiety hit like a peak, because he not only wouldn't let me hang out with other people, but he was psychologically abusive, which lowered my self-esteem so much, and just so many other factors that I can't go into every detail. But if you were there, you would be like, okay, I get it. She's like totally not in a good situation. And yeah, this being codependent is basically exactly what he wanted. He basically tried to do everything for me, which, might sound nice, like, oh, your boyfriend does all the shopping for you, and oh, he does all these things for you, that's so great. But it wasn't great. It was his way of trying to make me codependent on him so I couldn't leave the relationship, basically so that he could control me and my life. And then he even took the doorknob off of my bathroom, so I couldn't even lock the door when I went to the bathroom. So I had no privacy or independence from him whatsoever. So I'm sure this sounds so obvious to everyone listening, like, why did you stay with him? Like, what? He took the doorknob off of the bathroom? Like, how could you live with that? Isn't that obvious that was not a good thing? Well, I was only 20 years old, and I had very little experience with men in general, or in a relationship. Well, I had experience with guys, like, who were my friends in high school, but I didn't have an experience with being in a relationship with a man. And also, he was a lot older than me. I was 20, he was 25 or 26. So I had very little experience in relationships. He was only my second long-term relationship, and I had no idea how fucked up what he was doing was. I didn't know. Yeah, it was so confusing. I was basically like a young, naive, confused girl that didn't know what the fuck was happening to me. And, looking back on it, and other people looking in on it, they're like, oh, obviously you're with an abusive guy, and why did you stay with him, you idiot? But these things are a lot more complicated. We're humans. We're not like... nothing is ever so simple in life. These things happen slowly over time, to where you're in a actual real life situation. It's not a comic book where things are cut and dry. It's a real life situation. So anyway, so this is when my social anxiety peaked, and I felt awful about myself, and I didn't want to see anyone. And I guess somewhere in there we broke up again, because I moved in with my sister and her 1-year-old baby, which was terrible, because I was 21 or 22. I was not ready to have a kid, and she was a single mother, so I was living with a single mother and her 1-year-old, and it was hell. It was hell for me. I was not into being her husband or whatever, or co-mother or anything. It was just not where I wanted to be in my life. I was just completely broken, and in this broken situation that I did not ask for. Like, right now, I could totally handle that situation. Yeah, I'd be the best aunt ever. In that situation, no, I was 20 years old, or 21, yeah, 21 years old, not having any of that situation. And the baby would cry and cry all night. And yeah, it wasn't like it is now, where he's 6 years old and cool to hang out with. He was a baby, and he cried and cried and cried constantly. Somehow I got back together with him, because I was in this equally emotionally damaging situation. So it was just like, okay, like, it was like the best of two evils. Like, I could just be alone with my single mother sister and her crying baby in this messy, disgusting house in the ghetto, or I could date this guy who can acquire me weed and alcohol and sexual things to take me away from this situation, to distract me from this situation, you know, like just going from one bad situation to another bad situation. But in this situation there were sex and drugs and music, so it seemed better. So then he would hang out at our apartment, and then my sister was able to firsthand view the abusive relationship that I was in, and you know, she saw that he was constantly putting me down and, you know, insulting me and putting me down and being very controlling, and also, you know, she would overhear him yelling at me and all this sort of thing. But sadly, she blamed this all on me, which is what people do. Blame the victim. And also at this time I was going through full-blown bipolar disorder, which no one knew about. I was like full-blown unmedicated bipolar in an abusive relationship, living with my single mother sister, and doing drugs, drinking, and it doesn't get better, it gets worse. And I dropped out of school because of my bipolar disorder. I was having all of these delusions of grandeur, thinking that I didn't need to go to school and I was going to make a lot of money in this multi-level marketing company, and also all these other things that I thought I was going to do that were manic thoughts. So then I moved to New York with him because he was from New York, and it wasn't New York City, it was the shittiest town in mid-state New York ever, and I'm gonna save this for part 2 because there's so much more to this story. Things are about to get crazy. Things are about to get even worse. Okay, so I'm gonna stop here. I think the next part will be a great place to start part 2. Basically where shit really starts to hit the fan, and I'm sorry for cussing so much in this video. It's just how I'm getting things across. That's really where things started to get really terrible. Watch part 2 if you want to increase your knowledge of this subject, or if you just, I don't know. I just can't keep going. I haven't eaten today, but I will upload part 2 soon, so please stay tuned for part 2, and please subscribe so you don't miss it, and or follow me on my Facebook, or like me on my Facebook page, and there you will see when I post a new video. And yes, thank you so much for watching, and I know this isn't easy to listen to, it's not easy to talk about, but anyways, I will see you guys in the next video.